Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Talk, episode 10. Let's talk about speak. So, really quick, I am actually recording this on my 24th birthday. So, I just want to thank everybody for the birthday wishes. It really means a lot. As you get older, birthdays aren't as exciting. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't wake up and I didn't feel like I was a completely different age than I was before. I was just like another day. The one thing that made it different was my husband, Steven, told me that for my birthday, if my daughter woke up in the middle of the night, Autumn, if she woke up in the middle of the night, he would get up. And it meant a lot because recently she's been getting up every night at 2:30, and my husband and I, what we do is we kind of split shifts since he has to go to work. So I'll put her to bed, but he does everything up until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I do everything after. And recently she's been getting up at like 2:15, 2:10, 2:30. So I'm like, oh my goodness. And so, he said he was going to do the whole night. And so I'm sitting here like, good luck. Good luck. And she doesn't wake up until 6 a.m., which is our usual normal wake up time. So, okay, that's kind of how this is going. And that was fun. But they both woke me up with, they played happy birthday and they sang to me. They're the best. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that. So this is kind of my first, movie review. And I wouldn't even consider it a movie review. I would consider it a movie recommendation episode solely because this podcast is a female geared podcast where we discuss issues that females face, some issues that I feel like a lot of conservative Christians shy away from. Like we've talked about, sexual assault. And that episode meant a lot to me because it was my own personal story. And so, this movie really kind of changed my perspective on speaking out about certain issues. And it's a classic teen movie. You've got some stupid, you know, political agenda type things, but it's so minor in comparison to today because this was made 20 years ago or over 20 years ago. And so that is like, they're talking about how, like, for example, they're doing a project in history class, where they're discussing Native Americans and how we stole their land. Compared to today, that's nothing to me. So I was like, this is a walk in the walk in the park. Okay. Um, so I kind of wrote my own little description. So this 2004 movie starring Kristen Stewart as a young girl, Melinda Sordino. Melinda is a freshman in high school, and we kind of learned this throughout the movie, but essentially she went to a high school party, right before school started with a group of her friends, a group of her girlfriends, and a senior named Andy kind of, took a little bit of an interest in Melinda. It's clear that he saw her as an easy target, is kind of what the movie portrays and shows us. She's a young girl, only 14 years old. Andy is a senior in high school. He's kind of a star athlete. So to him, that was an easy target. And so they meet each other at this party, and they're kind of hitting it off. It's clear, and throughout the movie we see things aren't as they appear. Andy kind of scouted her out, found her, and ended up raping her in his vehicle. And so after being raped at this party, Melinda calls the cops, and but she's so stunned, she doesn't know what to say. And so before she can get a word out to her friends that she had been raped, her friends are like, how could you do this? Like, what the he double hockey sticks are you doing? Why are you calling the police? And all of her friends abandon her. And that's kind of the plot of the movie. Is Melinda has been raped by a senior named Andy, and she's holding this burden, and she's holding this big secret because all of her friends didn't listen to her. She feels like she has no voice. And so, the beginning of the movie, you see her sitting in front of her mirror right before the first day of school, and she's kind of drawn on almost staples to signify like her mouth being shut. She's just kind of looking at herself in the mirror. And as this movie is doing flashbacks to, this summer party, she's dressed in cute clothes. Her hair is done. She's bright. She's bubbly. She's young. She's only 14 years old. And, and then it kind of cuts to where she is now. She's wearing dark colored clothing, her hair is a mess. She's not really participating in class. And one of the main reasons this movie is entitled Speak is because Melinda decides to go mute. And she'll talk to some people every now and then, like if she has to, like in class, or she has a lab partner, for example. And so sometimes, but the more the movie goes on, she's losing her voice and she's becoming within herself. And this movie is based off of a book. I did read the book. And the book, of course, is obviously better than the movie, but the movie does a fantastic portrayal of the book without changing too much. There is one thing the movie changed compared to the book, and I'm going to get to that. But so you see this bright, bubbly girl really go within herself, and I think the movie didn't mean to do this, but I think it really portrays what the devil does to us when, we go through hardships and when we struggle with things in life. He really makes it so that we should feel alone, or that he makes it so that we think we should be alone and we think we shouldn't speak up. Something that I found really interesting in the movie and so I rewatched it just a couple days ago because I used to watch this movie all of the time because it was such an encouragement to me. But I rewatched this movie. Something that I found very interesting now that I'm older is Melinda throughout this movie really gravitates towards strong male leadership. So, for example, her art teacher, who is a man who has children, a wife, he's married, has that nuclear family, she really gravitates to him. So at the beginning of the year, they're all given an assignment that throughout this school year, they'll be, drawing one specific item or person or place, and they'll be working on different interpretations throughout the year. And she and it was a big, bowl. They put their hand in the bowl, they grab a topic, and Melinda's is a tree. And she kind of goes to puts it back, and the art teacher goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. You get what you get. Oh, sorry, I hit the mic. The art teacher goes, whoa, 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 that's what you picked. And she goes, well, a tree? I'm 14. I know everything, right? So she's like, a tree? I've drawn that forever. And he's like, but close your eyes and think about a tree. And I mentioned earlier when Melinda was raped, it was in Andy the senior's car. And it was parked outside of the house of the party. And when Melinda opened her eyes after being raped, after Andy had exited the vehicle, she saw a tree. She was outside. And so, you kind of see this interpretation of that tree throughout the movie, but it's remarkable how much she gravitates. Like she starts eating lunch in the art room because, all of her classmates hate her because she called the cops at this party and they think she just wanted to stop the party when actually she had been raped. She has no friends. All of her classmates hate her, etc. And so she starts eating lunch in the art room with her teacher. Another male, leadership who is technically a peer, but is her lab partner, Dave. And, but Dave has a strong male personality. He is definitely a leader, like he leads the class in a lot of things, or, he speaks out about things he doesn't agree with in the class. And she gravitates towards him. And I find that fascinating because I feel like today's day and age, would be her girl pals, her gal pals, blah, 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 blah. And yes, she has hesitancy towards Dave. Like, for example, her lab partner, Dave, who I mentioned, he's like, oh, Melinda, can you come over to my house so we can work on this? And she doesn't want to be alone with him. And he doesn't understand it. And he's like, okay, whatever. But she still gravitates towards him and his leadership. She literally says in the movie, Dave, I want to be like Dave. He's my hero. And he's a dude. And I feel like in today's day and age, you wouldn't see that. You'd see Melinda surrounded by her gal pals. You'd see all of her gal pals, coming around her. We're going to be here for you. And they actually, in this movie, abandon her. And it makes her want to gravitate towards male leadership. And, throughout this movie, you're kind of like, okay, where's your dad? And it shows that Melinda comes from a broken home. The mother is the breadwinner of the house. Her father is unemployed and isn't really keen on looking for a job or even getting a job. You see him, kind of sitting on the couch watching TV. You don't see him really taking a strong presence in Melinda's life. You actually, in the movie, see a flashback to Melinda when she's a little girl and her father is playing with her, raising her up to an apple tree. And you see a tree a lot in this movie because of her art project. And you see how, she's has this vision of her father lifting her up, and playing with her, and encouraging her and helping her. And then it kind of cuts to the dad just sitting on the couch and watching TV. And I think a lot of people might, hear that and be like, well, then I'm not watching it because the father isn't a strong leader in the house. But we have to consider the fact that this movie is showing that that's a bad thing. Where in today's day and age, that would be considered classic dad isn't a leader, classic mom, she's got to do everything. But in this movie, it's actually highlighting that the father not being a part of Melinda's life is a bad thing and that it is not good. And I think that's And I think that's something to really point out. And the mother, of course, is taking on a role that God does not intend mothers to do, which is the main breadwinner of the home. God, encourages women to have careers. Think about all of the strong women in the Bible, but he does not encourage them to be the breadwinners and the leaders of a nuclear family. And we see this, we see the mom kind of holding it over the dad because of her strenuous relationship with him. And so we watch as these parents, the heads of the household and the leader of the household, are at it with each other. And so that makes it so Melinda, she doesn't want to add on to the problems of the family. It's clear. She watches as this dynamic goes down, as the mom goes into work, as the dad doesn't, and we see the breakdown of her family and how that has, you know, impacted her and impacted whether or not she wants to say something. And so as the movie continues, we really see Melinda and the effect that this burden has on her. And I almost think it's kind of, without meaning to, symbolism for how when we hold on to our burdens and we don't give them to Jesus, they really weigh on us. And her inward feelings of feeling alone, of feeling battered, of feeling different, they start to play out on her physical appearance. You start to see her, not as well groomed. You start to see her, jacket on, zipped up, hood up, and like I said, not speaking to people and going mute. And again, this movie has so much symbolism in it. And I think maybe that's why I even gravitated towards it when I was in high school and dealing with my own, sexual assault past and all of that. I really saw how you can be withdrawn within yourself and even thinking, I need to avoid this. I need to avoid this person, because you see Andy, who raped Melinda at the beginning of the movie, tormenting her throughout the year. Even so, for example, she's sitting at lunch. At a lunch. I'm homeschooled, okay? She's sitting at lunch with her friends, her classmates, people that let her sit with them, basically. And he kind of comes up behind her and leans over her, touching her. And you can see the panic settle in. And throughout the year, Melinda finally finds like a little kind of like hidden janitor's closet that nobody really uses. She kind of makes that as her hideaway and as her little place to kind of go, and she puts her artwork up there. And you see this panic inside of her. And it's crazy because I think today's society would encourage her actually not to speak out. And it's your choice if you want to speak out. If you don't want to, that's okay, because it's your choice. But in this 2004 movie, which was made 21 years ago, you see her, Melinda, struggle with the idea of not speaking out. You actually see her talking to herself, her alter ego in the movie, discussing, I don't know. I don't know if I should be speaking out. I don't think I should. And her alter ego is actually encouraging her to, and to get help. And so, and I found that encouraging, because I did sometimes think, oh, it might be easier not to tell anybody and cause stress in other people's lives, or even, relive that in my own life. But you see this young girl, 14 years old, talking with herself. Do I tell people? Do I tell people? And one of the key points in this movie is Melinda's ex. My hair is bothering the crap out of me. I'm gonna push it back. It's got so much. Blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna brush it a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna brush it a little bit. There we go. So one of the key points. So one of the key points in this movie is Melinda's ex-best friend, Rachel. So their dynamic is interesting. And I think you see this a lot as a girl. Sometimes you have gal pals who love to be your friend. They're so fun. They're fun loving. You love to go to parties with them, and you see that at the beginning of the movie. But the minute Melinda actually starts to deal with something serious, Rachel abandons her. She actually, slaps her across the face at this party after Melinda has been raped, because she called the cops, didn't even take the time to listen to her friend. And so, Melinda is going through this inward battle, essentially, with herself. Do I speak out about this? Do I not? Did this even happen? Am I blowing this out of proportion? Shouldn't I be lucky that Andy even wanted to spend time with me? And as Melinda is going through this internal battle, you see Rachel come through the hallways and hug Andy, Melinda's rapist. And it turns out Rachel, Melinda's ex-best friend, is dating Andy. And it's like in that moment, Melinda is like, oh my gosh, this is like for real life. Like he is now dating my ex-best friend. And then it adds even more tension onto the situation. Should I tell my best friend? So she starts to have this internal battle with herself. Do I tell my ex-best friend she's dating the man who raped me? I mean, because he is a man. He's a senior in high school, meaning he's probably 17 or almost 18 years old. Melinda's 14. And that's insane. And there is and so essentially throughout the movie, then Melinda's grades begin to fall. There are signs. She's not grooming herself. She's not wearing the same clothes. She's not talking. That's the big one. She's withdrawn within herself. Her grades are slipping. And so the school calls her parents in to inform her that, your daughter's grades are slipping. And this could have been a pivotal twist in the movie. The parents could have pulled her aside, talk to me, communicate with me. And, for those parents and grandparents out there, there are such obvious signs that your child is struggling, or your grandchild or your niece or whatever. And sometimes it can be easier to ignore them because sometimes you know the truth deep down and you don't want to face it. And that's like the worst thing you can do, for that girl who is struggling. And so the parents actually, in this case, go, Melinda, are you okay? Melinda says no. And they go, well, you need to get your grades up. And that's kind of the scene. And watching that, she says no. There's cries for help. There are cries for help. The grades, the appearance, the not speaking. Like there are clear cries for help. And Melinda's parents are ignoring them because they're so focused on their own, marital struggles. And that's why you hear a lot, like you need to get right with yourself and you need to get right with God, before, talking with your children about certain things or helping, the women in your life through certain things. Because if you're all right with yourself and you're all right with God, it makes it easier for you to, face these problems. And so Melinda cuts class after that incident with the grades. And she's sitting on a bus. And this to me really sticks out as well. She's sitting on a bus and kind of looking at all of the people as they go about their day. And she focuses in across the seats from her. She focuses in on a mom and daughter. And the daughter is young, probably 10. And the mom is, holding the daughter, cuddling with her and just kind of talking with her. And she just focuses in on that. And the camera focuses in on that mom and daughter. And and you hear her, because she kind of narrates the story throughout the movie. You hear her go, I need to tell someone. I need to tell someone. She kind of looks over and there's another woman on the bus. I need to tell someone. And the symbolism that the women and the fathers in young women's lives are so important is huge in this movie, between, her gravitating towards her art teacher, her gravitating towards her strong-willed leadership personality peer who was a man, her looking at the mom and daughter on the bus. I need to be communicating with somebody. I need to tell somebody what happened to me. It's so obvious that the main internal struggle in this movie is a lack of mother and father in the house, not just mom and not just dad, a lack of having both of those, the maternal, the caring side of the mom, but the leadership and the strong-willed, male headship in the home. It's clear that both of these are missing because the parents have actually reversed roles. The dad is now at home. And fathers are great at home. And don't get me wrong, single fathers and single mothers, those are such important jobs. But God meant for the house to have a strong maternal and a strong paternal. And that's important. And And Melinda's seeking out those relationships, but not with her mother and father because they have reversed roles. The mother is now the breadwinner. The mother is going out and being the leader of the home. The father is staying home. You even see him coming in to, help cook a Thanksgiving meal because the mother doesn't understand. Like things like that. That is such huge symbolism for how important a mother's role and a father's role is in a child. Because when the child is struggling and the mother and father aren't in their roles, you see a breakdown and it falls onto the kid and it becomes a burden because now Melinda believes she can't speak to her parents because she doesn't want to add that burden onto their lives. So, fast forward, Melinda is given the project of the suffragettes in school with and at this point she's basically gone mute to a lot of people except for Dave and like her art teacher. And so she goes to Dave and she goes, Dave, can you do this presentation verbally in class? Because the teacher is kind of a horrible guy. He's not very nice. He's not very understanding. And Dave agrees. And they basically get shut down. Melinda gets in trouble, etc. But what I want to point out from this scene is that Dave and Melinda are kind of sitting after class in silence, and they're sitting. And I wrote this down. I'm going to read it. So he says, sorry, I can't read my handwriting. Dave says to Melinda, Melinda, the suffragettes were all about speaking up. You can't speak up for your rights and be silent. For a teen movie, 2004 teen movie, Kristen Stewart, whatever, that is a powerful statement. You cannot speak up for your rights and be silent. That to me, I think, is what stood out the most when I was younger watching this movie. Because I think, like I said earlier, in this day and age, I honestly feel like sometimes women are encouraged to be quiet about their sexual assaults. And especially sometimes in Christian conservative circles, they're encouraged to be quiet about maybe sex before marriage. They're encouraged to be quiet about their sins. And rape is not a sin, but other sins, because of the fact that, it's hard to talk about, or, you need to do it yourself. And so when Dave looks at Melinda and says, you cannot speak up for your rights and be silent, something clicks in her head. Something clicks in her head. And she realizes, Dave is right. I can't be. I can't sit here, and watch as my best friend's dating my rapist. Watch as my parents, are breaking down and I need to speak with them. Watch as different, and there's little plot points of the movie that I'm not, honing in on, but watch as these things are happening and not speak up for myself. And that's so powerful. That is so powerful, because sometimes as a woman, it is easier to be silent and just move on. It is. It is easier to not share it with anybody and to sit there and hold on to it and go, well, this will pass. This will pass. And you see this reoccurring theme in the movie. Melinda continues to hold on to this burden. Oh, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. And it never passes. It actually only gets worse. And it is a perfect symbol for how Jesus takes our burdens and lifts them off of our shoulders. Like sometimes it can be, oh, I don't want to bring this to God. I don't want to bring this to Jesus, like I'm just going to kind of try to keep it hidden. I don't want to really talk about it. But it's even like with secrets, like sometimes like my husband, Stephen, and I, sometimes there have been things that we've kept from each other. And when we then come together and communicate about them, that burden is lifted off of our shoulders. And it's the same thing Melinda goes through in this movie. And it's symbolism for how Jesus takes those off of us. And so, after that, Melinda has a moment where she looks at the mirror and she goes, this happened. And there is no avoiding it. And that is another powerful scene, because there is none. There is no avoiding it. Melinda was raped. He goes to her school and he's dating one of her best friends that she's known for her whole life. And it's time to allow this burden to be lifted off of her shoulders. And Melinda makes the decision to tell her best friend what happened that night at the party. And you watch as Melinda approaches her friend Rachel in the library, and she writes on a piece of paper that Rachel is using for school, I was raped, period. Rachel rushes her outside, Melinda. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Are you all right? Did you get pregnant? Like, did you get STDs? Like, classic questions. What happened? Blah, blah, blah. And then the question, well, who was it? And Melinda takes a second. It was your boyfriend, Andy. And Rachel doesn't believe her. And she walks away. And, Melinda has this moment. And again, symbolism at its finest. Melinda has this moment where and you can tell where she reconsiders speaking out about her rape because of how it went with her ex-best friend. Why would you want to go ahead and talk about it with others if somebody that you were so close to is pushing you away? And that is such symbolism for sometimes us as Christians, and it goes back to like even Christian movies. There's always that scene where, you could do the worst things and then the minute you profess to Jesus, everything's better. And sometimes that doesn't always happen right away. Jesus takes burdens off of our shoulders. Like I just said, he does. And sometimes it's right away and sometimes it's not. And as Christians, we can be impatient for that change. Sometimes we can go, oh, I hit the camera. Sometimes we can go, Jesus, I did this. I had sexual sin. Or even Jesus, I've been holding on to this sexual assault and this burden and I can't forgive and I can't let go. And we just expect this spin and then we're good. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And you see that as symbolism in this movie because Melinda has made the decision, I'm going to tell people about my rape. It's time. There is no avoiding it. I need to do this. The first person she tells doesn't believe her and walks away and leaves her and abandons her. And you see this moment where Melinda goes, okay, maybe that was a mistake. And sometimes you do that with Jesus and your relationship with God. You go to church one time or you read your Bible one time and things aren't changing. And you go, okay, maybe I, need to just do whatever I was doing because clearly this isn't going to work. And you see that in this movie. And, Melinda comes back from school and her father is sitting on the porch and Melinda's like, hey, Dad, hey. And he's dressed in a suit. What are you doing today, Dad? Why are you in a suit? Why are you dressed up? Her dad, you know what? I went on a job interview and it went well. I think I'm going to get the job. And you watch as Melinda embraces her father. That's amazing, Dad. Because the dad is now finally taking back control of his family. And you watch as Melinda then decides, I'm going to continue and I'm going to push forward. And, there's other plot lines in the movie. Like she stands up to this one girl who's been kind of mean to her the whole entire movie. You see as Dave and her become friends. She really embraces that friendship. And it's obvious it's a little bit more. And one of the pivotal scenes of the movie is Rachel is in the car with Andy after Melinda had told her that it was Andy who raped her. And Rachel goes, Andy, do you know Melinda? An instant panic from Andy. Oh, well, excuse. And Andy calls her a B word, rhymes with snitch. And it's in that moment Rachel knows that she screwed up because of how defensive Andy was. And, I'm not going to spoil the movie. I'm not going to talk about the ending because I want to encourage people to watch it. There are a couple instances of language, like the B word. There's the A word, okay? I don't want to cuss on this show, And there obviously is some flashbacks to Melinda's rape, but there's no nudity. It's not done in a crass way. It's done in a real way. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but I would so encourage you as a woman to watch this because of the symbolism of the importance of the mother and father in the home, the symbolism of strong male leadership, and the symbolism of relationship, but also just the symbolism of how God takes burdens off of our shoulders when we come to him and when we open ourselves up to judgment from others. He rewards that by hearing us where we're at and being there for us where we're at. And so I watched this movie on Paramount Plus. That's where you can watch it. Speak from 2004 with Kristen Stewart. There's a lot of things in this movie that I don't think they meant to. It's funny how God finds his way into things that the spirit of the age thought they got away with and they didn't without him. And I would encourage you to watch that. And I would encourage you to take note on how tricky it can be sometimes for women to speak up. Because that's another thing too. I think as conservatives, we have a tendency, well, she didn't speak up about this when this happened. And there are some false claims. I get that. There are some women out there, looking for a buck. I get that. But think about the women who I never went to the police. For mine, I never did. And it was because I was afraid. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. And with Melinda, she doesn't talk to anybody right away. Melinda in the movie, she doesn't talk to anybody right away. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean it doesn't have real effects. And sometimes as conservatives and Christians, we look at women who haven't spoken up about certain things and we shame them, or we call them liars, or we tell them, well, now you're just coming out because it's the popular thing to do. That's not always the case. Sometimes we need to take a second before we say things like that. So that was Let's Talk. Episode 10, Let's Talk About Speak. Episode 10 marks a milestone, double digits. I appreciate everybody, for watching, for listening, and for sharing. Always feel free to send me an email about topics or maybe something that you want me to read on the show, a story of yours, story of a friend's, a story of a daughter's, etc. It's Anna with one N, A-N-A, Hibbs, HIBBS 23 at gmail.com. You can follow me on X, Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this little review, this little recommendation. And thanks so much.